Hi guys, we both recently read the new book, script basically, for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and just want to come on here and add our voice to the incredibly negative mix that's out there of reviews for this, and also give it a slightly negative review, I have to say. And this won't be completely spoiler free. We'll probably mention some things that aren't. So just a warning. We're not really. Yeah. We didn't really think or script this through first. Just kind of talking off the cuff. So we'll probably say some things that are spoilers. So just a warning out there. And I think this is good because it's getting the perspective of you read them more when we were kids, like when they came out. You read some of them like at the premieres and stuff like that, and I didn't. Like even though I was the right age, it came out during elementary school through high school, I guess is the last couple. I only read the first two books and saw the first maybe three movies back then. I wasn't a Harry Potter thing. I was too busy reading like Terry Goodkind and just didn't care. But she made me read them last year. I think it was
You made me read Twilight.
I know.
So
yeah,
I think
we made
we
made each other read the popular meh fiction. So I read through them last year. So it's an older fan and a newer fan's perspective, and we have pretty much the same opinions. And that this is terrible.
Well,
it's pretty terrible.
It's pretty terrible.
Pretty terrible. So I think the first thing that we both mentioned when we talked about it was that the thing that really stuck out was how it was not true to the characters as far as a lot how they were presented. I mean, I know for me, Hermione was one of the ones because Hermione's my favorite character, and she just didn't and not just because Emma Watson, but even in the books.
It's because of Emma Watson.
Okay, maybe a little bit because of Emma Watson, but she made me pay more attention to her character in the books. But yeah, so what did you think was completely wrong with Hermione's character? I mean.
Well, I think there was just noticeably from the very first page that there was a problem with the voice of the writer. It was definitely not J.K. Rowling, which I didn't realize at first, and then I looked a little bit closer at the cover, and it says that she came up with the story, but I feel like I was a little bit misled, and I think a lot of people felt that way, that I knew it was a play going in,
right.
But
everyone
I didn't really think that she had nothing to do with it, and I think it's pretty clear after reading this that she had very little to do with this.
Just kind of came up with a very general story and okayed it, and kind of like George Lucas with the after Willow, the Shadow Heart, Shadow Moon, like all those books. It's kind of like he came up with the story, and he made Willow, and then a writer made a new series based off of probably a few paragraphs of text, kind of like that type of thing.
And I feel like that's what this was, and I think it's very noticeable for her because she has a very distinct voice as a writer, and so that immediately threw me off. I kept looking at the cover and thinking, this is a book, right? I'm not reading fan fiction. I'm reading, this is published.
Yeah, and I think that change in the writer's voice and the tone, I think, carried over a little too far into the way the characters acted and things that they said. Because sometimes you can do that, pick up even
some people are really good.
Frank Herbert's son, what's his name? I forget. Who continued the Dune series. Mm-hmm. He was pretty good at transferring. It's a different voice, but he still transferred the same feeling.
Star Trek books and
Star
Wars
a lot of the
books.
Star Trek books. Yeah,
there are some people who are really good at mimicking that voice of the writer or the creator, and
right. Yeah,
I think that they I really think that the issue I have with this is that the people who created it were creating it to be a play, not to be written at all, not to be read as a script, and they were focused more on the effects.
Yeah,
because reading this, you can definitely tell this is about the effects and about apparating and all the spells, and it's just a fantastical
I think it's
display of that.
It's definitely something and you're especially when you're younger, really big into theater, going to Broadway many times, or a lot of screenplays, and I started off, first thing I did was go into film school for a little bit, and always had an interest in that area where you can kind of tell reading a script that it's very visually focused. The main focus is really the display of the story, not necessarily just the story and the dialogue. It doesn't. It works well when you see the entire thing together, I feel like. Mm-hmm. But I feel like in this form, it just feels so much like it's missing a piece. And a script doesn't have to feel that way. You can read a script many times and you can just get enough of a picture that can stand on its own. And I think that's the problem with this, is that it doesn't feel like it stands on its own. It doesn't represent the characters faithfully. And probably the biggest problem that I had was after I read the whole thing. I mean, first of all, I didn't realize, yes, it's a play, but I didn't realize they were going to kind of run through the first couple of years of their kids, years of Hogwarts so quickly.
A lot of plays do that, where they're trying to introduce things
to introduce
quickly.
That and get to a point. But to me, it felt like when you do that, you rush through to get to a certain point of their lives where the meat of the story is. And it didn't quite feel like that to me.
Oh, it wasn't.
It didn't like feel like it was leading up to like, all right, let's get these characters, get a little bit of knowledge of them, their background, and then we'll get to the meat of the story. And it didn't turn out the way I thought. I thought it was going to be a very much a passing of the torch story,
yes.
and focus very much on their kids. Mm-hmm. And I think in many ways it was instead just like with the time travel aspect, which wasn't needed at all. It became like a greatest hits of the Harry Potter universe through the eyes of the children rather than their own separate adventure that didn't involve the like adults. Like I feel like it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, and it felt unnecessary.
I think the time travel just kind of tainted the memories that you have of those scenes, because those were iconic scenes, and they kind of just, oh look, and I mean sometimes the dialogue was like exact, I swear, word for word of the original scenes in the books, and I mean that's not what I want to read. I want to read a new story. I want to see, and I feel like a quarter of this thing is just
you can do time travel right, but it didn't. But it didn't do it right in this.
No,
I think you can still do time travel, even though it's been done a million times, and make it work. But this didn't, and some of the things like I don't know, like I wasn't a huge fan growing up, but some of the stuff didn't make sense to me, having even just read the books once, where when they went back and say like Cedric didn't die. Like that whole aspect where like he became a Death Eater then, like it just some characters in these sort of like alternate timeline when they changed the past changed way like it didn't make sense, and things like why were there like mudbloods in like under if you had that world where he lost and then like everything happened like evil reigns, that type of scenario, the dark world. I guess they're kind of going that to kind of mirror universe thing. There were things like, why were there mudbloods even in Hogwarts? Like it wouldn't be under that. Like it's all about like pure blood and things. Like why would it be there?
Snape's character, that's one of my favorite things about the whole series, is Snape's character. It just like completely changed, and it's just like it just didn't remain true to what those characters were. And I think that's one of my big problems with this, is that, like, what were you doing? Yeah. Did anybody read this? Do we like proofread this at all? There's just, and then you see this picture, and I was like, wow, they're friends. They really collaborated on this. Look at this picture of them being nice and friendly, and I think that might be the only time they saw each other. It was
the other thing too is I feel like they had to have been part of the, not necessarily part of the fan fiction community, but like Reddit, because just from the bits that like just from the bits I've learned from you and the bits that I've read, it seemed like a lot of the themes that are common in Harry Potter fan fiction like made their way, like wormed their way into this in some form or another. Like even the Harry and like Draco, which is like seems like a very common element to have the two of them be like lovers in the fan fiction because of the hints of that throughout Harry Potter. That I think that was almost transposed to their children then, like the two boys, like that same relationship, like
them,
it just
I think everything that is in here has been done in the fan fiction world, and I think she knows that, and I just have such a problem with the reason for her epilogue in book 7, which I didn't agree with at all, but whatever, you want to do that, that's fine. It was very possessive and very, this is the end of Harry Potter, I'm wrapping it up so no one else can, and that's fine. That's great that you did that. I respect that you did that, even though I don't necessarily 100% agree with the way you took that.
But then she hasn't.
But then you didn't do that. Yeah. And then I read an article saying like J.K. says that this is it. This is the end.
It's not going to be.
And I think this just screams to me of money grab.
Yeah. Well, I think because she tried to move on from Harry Potter,
and that's
and
that's
can't.
Really...
She's one of those authors that's so tied to one book series, kind of like Terry Goodkind tried to move on.
That's and
he went right back to the Sword of Truth series. Like he's one of those authors that's like, you are known for this, and anything else you do is just not going to work.
But I think in that situation, that's fine, and you need to like accept that, or go like in the Mark Hamill direction, do something different. And that's what I thought. She's doing a play. She wrote a play, so that's a different direction. That's fantastic. But I think she should have gone in a different way. You finished Harry Potter. You finished his story. You can go back. You can do the Marauders. I know a lot of people would love to see that.
There's so many other characters.
Anything. And I mean, they're coming out with that movie, and that's a way you can take this world. If you want to stay in this world, there's so many possibilities.
Yeah. If you're going to stay stuck in this world, stay in this world, but don't stick with Harry Potter. Say that like Harry Potter is done.
Yeah.
And I'm moving on to different aspects and staying in the
that's
same
fine.
world. But yeah,
And,
but it's not.
there's nothing wrong with that.
That was my main thing, was that this felt unnecessary.
It was extremely unnecessary.
And wasn't executed well. And like the combination, like if there was a series that were like, I really need a true ending, like or something more, like it wasn't complete, and you needed something and it wasn't executed well, that's one thing. But if something is completely not needed, it really puts an extra pressure on it to be really good, and it just wasn't. So to me, it was a double letdown. Like there's no reason for it to exist, and it wasn't very good at all. Like it got a lot of things wrong. Just I don't know.
No, it was just horrible, and there were just so many times when you're thinking, "What am I reading? This is not fan fiction, but it's bad fan fiction." Like I've read better, people who write it for free and put it on the internet, and I can't believe we paid all this money for this. But no, I hated that, and I think there are elements that you could have taken something like one of these elements and made a book about it, but. Instead, they just kept going with the.
That was my thought too. Is that this was weird to even come out with this. My thinking when I first saw it, didn't realize at first that it was just the script. I didn't realize it was just like a printed screenplay. My thought was, if you're going to do this based off of the play, maybe J.K. Rowling herself would sort of novelize, put that play into a novel form, because a lot of the general work is done. It's just kind of fleshing it out and putting it in more of a prose form.
I think that proves the fact that she had very little, if nothing, to do with this.
Yeah, because that's what in that position, I'm surprised she wouldn't do that to release it. If you're going to release it outside of to the public in book form, why not make a novel version of it?
Just if you look at the cover, if you look at I don't know, everything about this, even if you take the dust jacket off, the colors here, this is the same as the Harry Potter books. They made it look very similar, and I think people got very confused with this, even though I think if you're following the news, you knew that this was a play, that this was coming out as a play.
Yeah.
And I understand that people were confused about that, but I think she should have handled that better. And I think, again, this is a cash grab. And that's why there are so many plot holes. There are so many horrible...
It's the level of a fan fiction spin-off. It doesn't feel like it's part of that actual series. It's and here's this other stuff, So, I don't know, and she just can't move on. I mean, has anyone else even read this? What is it?
Well,
I didn't read it.
This is actually kind of sad, because I went to a used bookstore that had just moved from one location to another, and they were kind of clearing out excess inventory, stuff they couldn't get rid of. So if you bought something, you got a paper, a grocery paper bag filled with books. And so I just grabbed one of them. I didn't look inside of it all. And there were 2 copies of this. And this is J.K. Rowling's attempt at an adult novel.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is what it is.
But to end up in a paper bag of cheaper next to free books,
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I would read. It's not something I would really pay for. And even just reading the back cover, and I don't know if I would have picked this up, even though it has her name on it. And I think that's the only reason
why it sold initially.
It did do really well initially
because of her name, and then but she realized that you drop off on sales and reviews, and things just don't continue. I think she's stuck career-wise in Harry Potter, but my feeling from what's come out of that universe is just that she doesn't have the heart in it anymore. I feel like she was very passionate. I mean, the point of writing on napkins and being poor and single mother, and I feel like there's
being poor has nothing to do with it.
But there's a certain drive, a certain passion when you're looking up and you're at the bottom of the hill, and you're looking up at that success in the future, and once you come to the other side, and she got to the point where it's okay, I'm done with Harry Potter, and then she tried, but she's not done with Harry Potter, and I don't feel like that drive is there anymore, that passion for it. I feel like there's that heart missing. Yeah.
This was ridiculous.
I feel like that's a good example of just the heart is missing now.
And I don't know if you agree with me, but this just reminded me of a George Lucas type of scenario, because it's just, first of all, I don't know how much of this she came up with, but Delphi is just ridiculous. It's just absurd. And how do you not know your own material? How did somebody not say, oh wait, Bellatrix, we saw her. When she should have
there's
been
no
pregnant.
way she could have been pregnant in...
And how would Draco not know? She was living in his house. That's his aunt. How would she not know?
Harry Potter is now a brand, not a story, in a different way.
I think if you're writing a story, if you're writing a script for a play or a movie, you should know that Princess Leia's mommy died. You should know. You should know these facts. Especially like there's a hardcore fan community that is going to know exactly what is not true, what is not canon. And I think and it doesn't even make sense from the perspective of the Dark Lord. He would either covet this child and let nothing happen to her, or he would fear this child and he would kill this child.
Yeah, one or the other, and
everybody, all the Death Eaters would know, which means Snape would know, which means it just, there's so many little elements that are just absurd.
Yeah, and those are the reviews that I found the most interesting, just like quickly perusing some stuff. Like, as a casual fan, I felt a lot wrong with it. But then you get into like the real hardcore Harry Potter fans, and they're just like picking it apart, like piece by piece. It's like, wow. It's like,
this is the thing about Harry Potter, and the thing I enjoy about Harry Potter, because it is in no means my favorite fantasy series. There is a lot that I take issue with, but one of the things that I think is important with Harry Potter is that it's so important for the fantasy genre, because this is the first time I feel like since Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit that fantasy, and I mean Narnia too, but it was really
a more modern example of that.
Socially acceptable, and people were talking about a fantasy book, and it was so strange because you never see fantasy in schools. You never see people talking about that genre. I think it's more of a niche, more of a small community as far as not being like socially acceptable, and the cool kids aren't reading it.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. Like, I don't necessarily like Harry Potter that much. Like, if you are a big fantasy reader and have been your entire life, it's an okay middle level fantasy that borrows way too heavily from other stuff. Like, it's okay.
But there are some elements that are like, I love Severus Snape. I think he's a fantastically developed character. I absolutely adore him. It's
that middle level. Like, it's okay, but it's like it got people reading, and to me, like, I feel like it's the greatest thing is getting people reading, and it's a perfect gateway series for someone who hasn't read a lot of fantasy at all, especially it's a good gateway series to get introduced to that type of reading, sort of like reading something like a younger version of like a sci-fi book, and then eventually you get into like Heinlein or like Orson Scott Card, or like you get into different things like that. I think this is a great sort of gateway series where it isn't incredible, but it's a great if you're not a big fantasy reader, or if you're a very young reader, it's a great beginning kind of gateway series, and I really appreciate what it has done for just reading in general in an era where we're starting to read less and less. But I feel like that happened and it's done, and Harry Potter should be laid to rest. And I feel like anything like this that's coming out, if the heart's not in it,
I don't think the heart is going to be in it. I think the universe itself still has a lot of potential and a lot. I'm excited for this movie. I'm excited.
I don't think it's going to be used very well, though.
I would love to see, like Dumbledore and Grindelwald. Like, I would love to see that Dark Lord. I would love to see that explored, and I think she should have done that. I think she should have done the Marauders. I think there's so many things she could have done. She could have done something about the ghosts of Hogwarts. She could have done. There's so many.
But that's what I mean. Like, where I don't think the heart is in it for her to do those things.
Well, she didn't do it.
Yeah.
She didn't do it.
Oh yeah, but I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like, her heart is not in it. She's not doing those things. She's not taking it. Like, the universe, if it's not going to be laid to rest and say I'm done with it, then you need to do it in that same manner of passion.
She didn't say the universe.
She said Harry Potter, which isn't. But she's not like. I really still think like the heart is not in the creation of this. I don't think it's going to be. But I don't think the torch has been passed to other people to continue that universe when she doesn't. I
understand that though, but like I can't imagine creating all of that and coming from nothing and going to like this fame and then giving it to somebody else. Like I can't imagine doing that. I wouldn't expect her to do that, but I would expect her, then continue it in film, continue it in plays. But you need to be the creative control. This is not like George Lucas just lets anybody do anything with the Star Wars franchise, and like it became a franchise. This is like her world. That's her baby. Like I can't imagine.
That's what's happening. It's becoming just a brand name.
She's branding it, and then she kind of is just, you gotta pay me money. Okay, fine. We'll take my picture and we'll do this. And I think it's a lot of disillusion for the children that grew up with it, because our generation, we did grow up with it, and it was one of the first times I remember having like great conversations with other people about a book, like a fantasy book, because nobody else, like I didn't have the experiences you had with like all of those other nerd people who just like read everything you did and played Dungeons and Dragons, and I didn't have that. And so for me, Harry Potter was important because it was the first time that I had that experience, and so it is almost like a letdown because thought we could get that back for a second.
Yeah.
And
But,
she
yeah.
kind of crushed our dreams.
Yeah, so that's, you get the picture. We don't like it.
No.
Thought it was pretty bad. Just, wanted to add our voices there to the mix and say that, yeah, we didn't like it either. And and a dynamic, too, of, like, someone who has read them for a long time and someone who's more recent, like, reader, both agreeing on a lot of the same aspects. Like, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, did you guys read it? What did you think? Did you like it? I mean, nothing against you if you liked it,
I think
but
I was really concerned when I finished reading it that everyone else loved it, and I was like, oh my gosh,
and then you get on and it's
I'm so jaded and horrible
and
that I hate this.
Maybe 5 to 10% of the reviews are positive, like so.
Yeah, most of them are pretty negative.
Most of them are like pretty trashing it, but yeah, so that was pretty awful.